want to talk about Warhol for a bit?
Yeah, I
I,
can. I
I
can
didn't
talk.
I didn't know he was religious. See,
Most people don't.
in New York, he's got a reputation for using people and kind of being a jerk.
He was. That doesn't mean anything.
I know, but
He's still
I
religious.
never attributed
Yeah.
practicing religion to him at all.
Yeah, but don't forget he could confess. He could confess his sins, so it didn't matter what he did.
Oh, that's true.
Uh, no, it's pretty. I knew he was when he died. I found out he was religious. I didn't know. Most people don't know. The vast majority of people don't know about his religion. But what I didn't know was how religious he was, and it was very religious. He pretty much went to church most days, and I think for me, making that video was a little bit of a revelation. I didn't realize how influenced he was by it, and it wasn't until I started thinking about it that I realized. I didn't realize that endless copying of something very much relates into religion. The idolization of Marilyn is, the idolization of the Virgin Mary. It all ties in quite neatly. Warhol is interesting because I get a lot of negative criticism about him on my YouTube channel because anyone can do that. A 5-year-old can do that, blah, 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 blah. But he doesn't come from nowhere. He comes from America, he comes from a place that was crazy with capitalism. People were consuming like nuts. It's you've got wars around the corner. People are there's most art movements came out of a lot of anger and a lot of issues. And I think pop art was that as well. It was a reaction to what was happening in America, what was happening all around the world. And pop art actually wasn't invented in America. It was invented in the UK. But the Americans did it so much better. And it was a bit like punk music in a way. When punk was invented in the UK and it was very nihilistic, whereas when it went to America, it became actually quite intellectual. These artists were producing this music in an intellectual sense. And pop art was the same as well. They took it and they ran with it. And Andy Warhol for sure was not a nice person. I can't see how. No, I don't think he was. I think he was probably on the scale, on the spectrum, because he doesn't seem to have much emotions. I've read his diaries, I've read biographies, and he doesn't ever come across as a kind, sweet, nice man. I think in the video, I talk about he worked in soup kitchens and worked for charities in New York. I think he did that because everyone in the church did that. It was part of what you did. And while his mother was still alive, Julia, who was very religious, he pretty much calmed down his lifestyle. I mean, I think out of all the artists I've ever read about, Warhol was the weirdest. I hate using that word, but he was just a strange dude, He was out of his time almost. And it's strange. But I'd say Warhol's Marilyn, which the one that I do the talk about is actually in London. It's he did lots of Marilyns, by the way, but the first one he did, the main one, is actually owned by the Tate Gallery in London. And I'd say that is probably one of the first 2 or 3 artworks that hit me, that made me think, oh, this is art, as a kid.
I saw his soup cans at MoMA once.
Right.
Weirdly, not that far away from Starry Night.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Physically.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a metaphorical leap, but just up the road in the MoMA. It's but I mean, I think Warhol was a bit of a Renaissance artist himself. He was a filmmaker. He was involved in music with what's his name?
He died recently. The Banana album there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lou
Reed. Yeah.
Did
he die? Okay.
Yeah, I interviewed him for a movie once, a film once, but I forget his name. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, but he was, Warhol was interesting because to me, he was really American, which is, as a kid in this country, I went to America for the first time in 1982 to New York, and it was rough. It was really, really rough, but it didn't compare to London. London was filthy, dirty, miserable, grey. And so for me, growing up in London, something like Andy Warhol and what was going on in New York was just amazing. I was a real fan of America when I was a kid, and Warhol was part of that in a way. I'd say it's way down there in my list of what's my favorite works, but I think it is definitely important.
Yeah, I think the importance, for me at least, comes out of it being a response to what was going on.
Yeah.
And sort of I wouldn't say progress. I'll use it in terms of just a moving on sort of word, but a progression of sort of a capitalist culture that was taking place.
It was a reaction to it.
The consumerism in the 50s and 60s just blew up.
Yeah.
So it was bound to affect the art world.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get Michelangelo without the intercity wars in Italy. You're not going to. It's Orson Welles he has a great cuckoo clock speech in The Third Man, and he talks about all these great artists, and they all came out of this anger, and they were angry with the world. You're not going to get Michelangelo without all those intercity wars that were going on. Plus he was gay, plus he was a strict Catholic. He was tortured. He was a tortured man. Leonardo was a tortured man. That's why they produced great art. This is a long way of saying that I don't know the actual quote from Orson Welles. But then, the Impressionists, they came out of the Franco-Prussian War. They came out of seeing their friends killed. There's a lot of anger building up. Cubism, that came out of the Spanish Civil War. These things all have a reason for happening. The First World War. And minimalism's the same. So is pop art. Pop art there's a reason pop art exists, and it's part of history. It's as much about history. Warhol is as much about American history as going to the moon was.